What's cracking, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Great League Remix coming into rotation here in the GO Battle League today at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. This Great League Remix is going to be a little bit more up-to-date than last season. However, there are still a couple of things that I'm kind of raising my eyebrows at here. But we've got a ban list consisting in the Open Great League minus Alolan Sand Slash, Wigglytuff, Dugong, Lickitung, Feraligatr, Lantern. Thank God. Azumarill, Skarmory, Vigoroth, Medicham, Altaria, Whiscash, Bastiodon. Wigglytuff was also a great ad, by the way. Cresselia, Galarian, Stunfisk, Talonflame, Trevenant, Charjabug, Skeldurge, and Annihilate. There are certainly a couple of things that stick out to me on this list. You can let me know in the comments what you think about this, but I feel like they took most of the new usage data and then they're like, you know what? Medicham sure is still used by so many people, and so is Galarian Stunfisk. I mean, come on. We should have put at least, you know, Gligar on here somewhere. That's a necessity, man. But anyway, a lot of the more annoying picks in the Great League are going to be out of the cup here. So that's going to be good news for us. For those of you who enjoy the Great League formats, the Great League Remix is usually a very healthy meta. Except this season, it looks kind of like it's kind of janky. So we're looking at Carbink and Registeel on the very top of the rankings. I don't know how you could possibly have not put Registeel and Gligar on there just from the sheer power alone. And we can get rid of Carbink because Carbink doesn't need to be here. Anyway, that elevates things like Quagsire and Gligar to the top of the rankings here. Mostly things that can beat the Carbink and the Registeel because they're just that thick and strong in these formats. But there's a couple other things here that I want to point out. Quagsire looking like a strong pick here as it's able to have a lot of play into almost everything in this top 20, if not more. And then we're starting to look down a little bit further. I think Poliwrath also going to pop off a bit in this meta, even though it's only ranked number 17. I mean, there's almost nothing on this top, like 15, 20 things that it doesn't have play against or just outright slaps to pieces. So I think that Poliwrath is going to be very, if not very common, it's going to be a very five-head day one sort of play as people are like, you know, going to play, you know, basically you just need answers for Mantine and Gligar. I mean, really, that's essentially all you need on this entire list. So you could just, you know, pair it with Registeel. Well, not Registeel. Gligar kind of beats Registeel. But you get my point, right? Like, just something that's able to beat those two and then have good play into most everything else. So let's take a look at the first team here. And honestly, this first team, that as soon as everything goes back to the size it was supposed to be, this first team here is going to be a rehash of the team that I hit Legend with. I know I just debuted it in a Great League video not that long ago. It was probably earlier this week, actually. But I feel like that with most of the annoyances out of the league, that's going to be things like this team struggled against Lickitung, and it struggled against Lantern. Those two things being gone, and also Alolan Sand Slash. Honestly, this team has become basically unchained in this meta, where Steelix is probably, and Empoleon, I guess, would probably be two of the biggest issues for this team. But we're going to see that, you know, this team has pretty darn good coverage. Mantine is rocking Ice Beam in this meta, but if you want to run Water Pulse, I think it's going to depend on you. And Quagsire has the Mud Shot, Stone Edge, Aqua Tail. I don't think Mud Bomb is going to be as useful in this meta as it was when we had, what was it, the Summer Cup? What was it? But Shadow Gligar, I mean, Shadow on Gligar is just, it's just a must just about. It ends up just being the superior version of Gligar, but if you don't have a Shadow and you only have a regular, you could use it. And Quagsire, I put it as a Shadow because Shadow Quagsire is just typically, you know, able to spam moves and hit harder. But again, regular Quagsire worked just fine, as when I originally made this team, I was using a Whiscash in place of the Quagsire. Solid coverage on the core meta here. Everything has play into this meta. And Mantine also, you know, Quagsire could land a Stone Edge, you know, Mantine, you stay in the mirror. Like, there's ways for this team to deal with a Mantine on the opponent's end. And I mean, when we look at this overall, the core breakers, right, so to speak, Pidgeot, Jellicent, Umbreon, Cofagrigus, like, and then we start getting things like Lileep and Lanoon, and I'm like, all right, I think the line gets drawn after Umbreon, and this entire team is neutral into Umbreon. Team has play and ways to deal with Pidgeot. Jellicent could be a little troublesome, but hopefully there won't be too many of those. But let's take a look at team number 2 here in the Great League Remix. And I realize that I cut off the screen a little bit. It's a little harder to see when it's on my right in front of me as opposed to on my OBS where I record things. But the second team here is going to be an Empoleon team rocking Gallade and Goodra in the back. You're going to be using your Goodra to be basically drawing out that Carbink, or even if you have to, you could draw out a Registeel. That'd be kind of awkward to draw out the Registeel. But with Aqua Tail, I think that you have a lot of play into the Registeel matchup, and I know for a fact that Shadow Empoleon can beat Registeel quite soundly, actually, in the 2 shields. It loses in the 0 and the 1s because of Zap Cannon, but it outpaces to that 4th move that it would need to knock out in the 2s. So, we're taking a look overall at the meta here. Again, Registeel's a little awkward, but if you see it on the lead, you can just use Empoleon to deal with it. Mandibuzz is one of those things that's like neutral into the whole team, but you have ways to play around it, right? Empoleon hits really hard as a Shadow. Goodra, you will probably be running Thunder Punch, and Gallade is also going to be on here as a way to hit things like close combats and things of the sort. So you have ways to fight back against something like it. Other than that, though, like Deoxys is, it could be a little bit awkward, but honestly, if you just safe swap your Goodra, you could probably get energy on the Gallade or the Empoleon to make a difference here. And then you'd be able to, Deoxys the same way, right? You just swap into Goodra and then hopefully Gallade and Empoleon there, get some energy somewhere. There's ways to play. Like, there's nothing that just beats this whole team without trying, right? Because after that, we get the Dedenne, Wobbuffet, Hawlucha. Like, yeah, okay, sure. I'm going to see a ton of those, I bet. I might see one, because game be throwing me curveballs. But aside from that, yeah, we're just using Goodra to, like, get their Charmer, their Carbink out, their Fairy, let Gallade sweep with shields. If you want to, you could run Shadow Gallade if you want to. Or you could even run something like Registeel on the lead if you wanted some more bulk in the front of the team here. But we can take a look at team number 3 now. Something a little bit different now. We got Scrafty on this team, as it's usually a pretty good, like, if you remember the old days of Nidoqueen, we would use Nidoqueen Scrafty core a lot. This team resembles that to a degree, except Cloudsire's got the bulk. Poliwrath can absolutely pummel in good matchups. And Scrafty does run Thunder Punch on this set, but if you want to run back to Power Up Punch, I don't think there's really anything wrong with trying to do it that way. Just the Thunder Punch can hit some things that you might need it to, because Mantine and things like that can be a little bit awkward for this team. But Clodsire can pull off a win, at least in the 1s, against Mantine with Stone Edge. In most cases, it's able to land those 2 Stone Edges because it outpaces to the big moves. And the Aerial Ace doesn't really do much, and Clodsire and Mantine both need 2 moves to knock each other out. So, but overall, team has a lot of play against the meta. Even something that would be awkward, like Gligar. I mean, you could just go ahead and cry a little bit, maybe. But Stone Edge on the Gligar is going to be helpful in order to help whittle it down. And then maybe you come in with the Poliwrath and shield farm down, something like that. Typically, if someone's got a flyer in the lead, for example, they're going to be weak to flying, or weak to fighting, or something of the sort in the back. They're going to be strong in the lead versus a specific typing, and maybe be weak in the back to it. So you kind of hope that you're going to be able to take advantage of that kind of team building. But if the opponent has another flyer in the back, then yeah, I mean, ABA flyer would cook this team. I get that much is true. But overall, the overall threats against this team in the meta, you're getting Gallade, Superior, Pidgeot, Tapu Fini, and then everything after that, like Chestnut, Venusaur, you might see them once in a while, but everything else after that, either you have play against in this meta, or it's just, you're simply not going to see it. Bombardier, man, sounds like fun, but you're not going to see any. Levani, Roserade, who? Goodness. This team's got some power, and I don't think that you have to necessarily run Scrafty, or you don't necessarily have to run with Clodsire. You could switch some things up in the teams, just similar roles, right? I just felt like it was an excuse to give us Thunder Punch Scrafty, being let it be used, because you could certainly, make turns. If you think there's like a Mantine or something in the back, Scrafty with Thunder Punch could make that a very nasty surprise very quickly. But we can get into the next team now as we get in right here. Don't make it awkward or anything. What awkward transitions. Anyway, team number 4, gonna be a Mandibuzz, Quagsire core, and we're gonna sandwich a Registeel in there. This team does have things that could break it, obviously, as any team will. We're gonna play this team a little bit more like a balanced team rather than a swap the safe swap to bait something out. So you're just going to want to be using, just kind of swaps and catches and trying to just put your opponent in an overall unfavorable position by just having a team with very broad, strong coverage on the meta. Now, the thing is that against most things, Mandibuzz is pretty positively neutral. And for the things that you're not, things like Carbink that absolutely dominate you, Registeel absolutely dominate you, we've got the Quagsire in the back to cover for those things. And Registeel is out there just to try and leverage shield advantage or maybe even get you switch advantage in some cases. But again, you're going to want to typically try to be careful about using the Registeel, because if you catch it up against something like a Gligar or a Quagsire, it could spell some trouble for you, depending on what the lead was. But that being said, team overall, very good rating here in the Great League and has ways to hit all the things that really trouble it. Like Poliwrath, yeah, okay. Mandibuzz and Quagsire don't do well against it, but Mandibuzz can sit there and launch off those aerial aces. Registeel has Zap Cannon, so there is play here. It's not like Poliwrath is going to solo the whole team. Hopefully. It's their shields. You only have 2 shields, and you can hit it with other things. But overall, team looks very, very strong and consistent. Just a matter of sometimes having that alignment that may or may not win or lose you games. But then again, what's to say? That's for every team, isn't it? Anyway, let's look at the last team here, number 5. Bringing back old Defense Deoxys. Pretty much, it's, you know, aside from like Toxicroak, it's the only like fighting, non-fighting, like the fighting resist with fighting damage. And in this set, it's running Rock Slide. Thunderbolt could work too, depending on how much you don't like Registeel. Deoxys in the Great League does beat Registeel going with the Rock Slide, so that's a plus. We're going to pair it with Greninja because typically the Dark types go well with Deoxys, in Greninja especially because Deoxys does struggle against most of the Mud Boys, having only its other coverage moves being Electric and Rock. It has trouble with ground types in general if it can't land those Psycho Boosts or get those shields with the baits. Greninja does very well by outpacing most of those Mud Boys, also beats the Ghosts, and really there's not a lot else. Like most of the things that Deoxys truly struggles with and was pushed out of the Open Great League by are pretty much gone. And we've got Greedent with Trailblaze on as our pivot, so if we're going to get, you know, we want to bait out the Poliwrath or other fighter that may be in the back, let Deoxys clear the way for Greninja, and then afterwards you just kind of hope that Greninja with shields or some energy can sweep the endgame. Overall, letter grade's not going to be looking great on coverage. Again, this is an open Great League format with just 20 things that are knocked off the list, so the list itself is going to be very long. Coverage is never going to be great in any of those situations. Also, the team is, I mean, I would say it's bulky. Deoxys and Greedent are a pretty solid amount of bulk, but Greninja's going to bring that down just a little bit. Then we got the very safe and consistent team. There are a couple of things, like this list looks bad, but like look at this. Toxapex, Serperior, Meganium, Go-Go, Tropius, Golbat, Clefable, Togepi, things you're never going to see. You might see Whimsicott. Fairies are fairly top problematic grass types that beat Deoxys. But again, there's no reason why you couldn't just stay in with the Deoxys or find a way to pivot into Greedent at a good moment and try to start, you know, getting rid of that grass type that might be on the lead. Overall, team looks like it could do very well. Again, you don't have to run something like Deoxys. You could very well run like a Clodsire or something. Just a matter of like just, you know, trying to change things around. Didn't want to bring Clodsire into another team. I know that I've already put Quagsire in a couple of them, but we're fine. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, one of these teams looks good enough to give us a try. Let me know in the comments if you try any of the teams and do well with them. And if you don't do well with them, I'm so sorry. But do your best. Hopefully, we make some good out of this 2-week meta. And I wish you all the best of luck today in the rotation. I am on vacation, so I will not be able to stream until I get back on Wednesday of this next week here. Going to be on vacation with the family at home with the kids and the wife. So going to be seeing you guys in the next one, pre-recording some content here, but that's all okay because I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.